This is my first attempt to, put forth something that I've done in, academic sense about Rumi, or, whatever I've done based on Rumi's works and everything. So I've created, like Chetana said, I've created a performance. I've created a Dastangoi that is based on the life and works of Rumi. And Dastangoi is basically storytelling. So I've included a lot of Farsi, that is Persian language, in this one. So before starting the presentation, I'll just give you some background of this thing. So I started learning Persian in 2018, and I had no idea who Rumi is, and I mean, we've come across his quote in the film Rockstar, that out beyond the ideas of right doing and wrong doing, there is a field. I will meet you there. So utna hi, I mean, I was familiar with Rumi with that quote only. Uh, what happened was, so basically my language for today, I'm going to use Hindi, Urdu, and English, so that it's easier for me to communicate as well, and easier for you to understand also. So कोई भी जुबान सीखने के दो तरीके होते हैं. First one is your grammar and second is vocabulary. तो vocabulary सीखना is a lifelong process. I mean, you come across your own अपने मादरी जुबान के, आपके मदर टंग के वर्ड्स के भी आप वाकिफ होते हो, रूबरू होते हो, देन यू से अरे ये लफ्ज, ये वर्ड हमें पता ही नहीं था. So it's a lifelong process, vocabulary. So for learning new words and vocabulary, I started reading poetry, Persian poetry, and modern Persian poetry as well as classical Persian poetry. So you must have known, like आपने बस नाम सुना होगा कि उमर खयाम है, सादी शिराजी, हाफिज शिराजी. So these are all Persian, classical Persian poets. So I started reading their poetry, and later on I found Rumi as one of the very, I mean, he had influenced me very, in a very broader sense, and more than others, of course. So I started just compiling and translating Rumi's works through my, jitna mujhe Farsi aati thi utna, and I started compiling it. And what started initially as an Instagram page later developed into a performance, and that's how I wrote and I performed the this one Dastangoi. It's called Rumi Hai. So this was my journey up to Rumi. So today I'm going to present some of the work, I mean, some of the work that I've done, and some of my interpretations about Rumi. Now, Rumi के बारे में हम जानेंगे, Rumi की life story and everything, will get to that part. But before that, Rumi, I didn't know कि Rumi is such a big phenomenon, especially in the West and especially in United States. So even in Europe, so there are there are smallest towns and ऐसे बहुत छोटे छोटे गांव है जहाँ पे literature club को they have named it Rumi Club. तो इतना मशहूर है रूमी मगरिब में, यानी वेस्ट में. So yeah, I didn't know any of that. So I just kept reading Rumi, and I went on translating Rumi, and then I guess here we are. So without wasting any time, let's just start with the presentation. If you have any question, whenever you can ask. Just my presentation is visible, right?
Yes.
Cool. Yes. So formally, I would like to first thank Sambhasha and this whole thing that we do, study group, and for giving me this platform for presenting this Rumi and my interpretation and my version of Rumi to you people. And I also thank you guys for being here. So let's just start. We'll start with life of Rumi. So many of us come across Rumi's quotes. Instagram पे if you search, so you'll find many Rumi quotes, or any social media. कुछ भी लिखा होता है, there is this beach, mountains, space, and नीचे Rumi. तो quote के, I mean, you must have seen कि हमने वो poster में भी mentioned कि no Rumi beyond Rumi quotes. तो रूमी की लाइफ, अगर आपको रूमी की जिंदगी के बारे में आपको पता चलेगा, then you'll be able to understand Rumi in a better way. क्योंकि उनके सारे अशआर को, गजल को, उनके पोएट्री को, there is this background of his life. तो उनके लाइफ के कॉन्टेक्स्ट में, if you look at the poetry, then it's really, you get the gist of it, or you get you have this whole understanding. So we'll talk about Rumi's life. He was born in 1207 CE, that is Common Era, and he was born in Balkh. That's why most of the times he's also called Jalaluddin Muhammad Balkhi. So we'll talk about this Rumi and Balkhi thing. He was born in Balkh, which is today's Bagram. There is this town in Afghanistan. It's called Bagram, and I mean, recently the U.S. forces withdrew from Afghanistan, and Bagram is a very important U.S. Army ka base in Bagram. So it was called Balkh pehle, and Rumi is from that Balkh. Afghanistan mein there is this province called Balkh province. So Rumi was from that town of Balkh basically, and like I said, that's why he's called Balkhi also. So with poets and philosophers and especially famous personalities, they have this thing. So for example, Amir Khusro was from Delhi. So Delhi was called Delhi at that time. So he was called Amir Khusro Dehlavi. Or Iqbal, Muhammad Alama Iqbal, he was from Lahore, so he was called Iqbal Lahori. So like that, Rumi was from Balkh, that's why he was called Balkhi. So it's very interesting that रूमी के लाइफ में किसी ने उन्हें रूमी नहीं कहा है, उनका जिक्र बल्खी ऐसे ही किया जाता था. He was called Balkhi only because he was from Balkh. Why Rumi? He spent most of his life in Kunya, which is we are going to see that. कुनिया करके एक शहर है जो है आज के टर्की में. तो ये आज का जो टर्की है, दिस वाज पार्ट ऑफ रोमन एम्पायर बैक देन. तो जैसे मैंने अभी कहा कि दिल्ली से किसी शख्स को दहलवी कहते हैं, सिमिलरली रोम के उस पीर को दे कॉल इट रूमी, एज इन रोमन. ओके, इट्स एन एडजेक्टिव. So that's how he came to be known as Rumi, and mostly after his death, people started calling him Rumi. I mean, because he spent second part of or most of his life in Kunya or the Roman Empire का जो part था शहर, so no one called him Rumi in his lifetime. So he was called Balkhi only. So he was born in Balkh, and 8 साल के होने तक he stayed in Balkh. What happened was from the east, from the Masriq, there was invasion of Genghis Khan, or Genghis Khan as we know him. And because of that, and there were many other reasons, his father, Bahauddin Muhammad, his name was Jalaluddin Muhammad, his father's name was Bahauddin Muhammad. Bahauddin Muhammad decided to, flee the city because of many reasons. First and foremost is the invasion of Genghis Khan, but it is said that the local priests and local sheikh and local authority, they had some conflict with Bahauddin. Some, I think, ideological differences they had. And at that time, Balkh was a center of Sufism and Islamic culture. So he had to flee with his family. So he left Balkh, and it's very, then he was searching, he was looking for some, good, another city like Balkh, which was, center of Islamic culture and tradition, and where Rumi would, Jalaluddin Muhammad would, get a chance to learn from good teachers and everything. So he went to, from Baghdad, from Balkh, he went to Samarkand, he went to Nishabur, he went to Tabriz, he went to Baghdad, and then he went to Damascus. Then he went to, he did this one, Hajj also, as in the pilgrimage also. He was constantly looking with his family, he was looking for some, good, like a town which was, where Rumi would grow up, and it would be helpful for him to, educationally and this one, culturally complementary for his son, basically. In between, he went to Nishabur. In this journey, he went to Nishabur. So Nishabur is another city in Iran right now, today's Iran. And there, they say, it's just a legend. There is no, documentary or literary evidence for this one, but it's famous as a legend that he met Attar Nishaburi. Attar Nishaburi was another Sufi poet, and he's said to be sort of mentor of Rumi in poetic sense, as in because later on Rumi ने अपने अशआर में कई बार अत्तार का, and there was this another poet Sanahi, इन दोनों का जिक्र किया है. तो Attar, he met Attar, and it is said that Attar gave him a book, his book, Attar's book, and it is called Asrar Name, yani Book of Secrets. So they say that it influenced Rumi. I mean, it influenced Rumi to. It was first introduction of Rumi to poetry, Asrar Name of Attar. So from there, they again went to Baghdad, and then they finally settled in Konya, which was in Turkey, which is in modern Turkey, but at that time it was called Anatolia. So they settled in Konya, and Rumi started, they started with his education and everything, and what we call Islamic jurisprudence, where you interpret the Quran, and then uh, you interpret the Quran, and you basically take care of the justice and judicial matters, basically. So Rumi was a ustad. Rumi soon became master in that one. Then Islamic theology, Islamic logic, Islamic philosophy. So everything, every branch of Islamic tradition, Rumi became a master in this one. So because he was master or ustad, the people in Konya started calling him Maulana or Maulavi. Maulavi यानी हमारा मौला यानी मौला यानी master. uh, as in his hikmat, his knowledge was so great that people started calling him our master because he guides everyone there. And then later, many sermons he did, दर्स lectures थे उनके रूमी के जब, तो ये lectures मिला के कुल मिला के and compile करके they've made it into a book, and that book is called Fi Mahafi. So that book is called Fi Mafi, and you can see who Rumi was as a person and as a Maulavi, especially. And he had few answers to people's question. For example, there is this very profound philosophical question in every culture, but in Islam it is there. Zabro Qadr. Zabro Qadr yani this one, free will and predetermined, this one, like destiny and free will. So there are many, many verses and many sentences and many this one in Fi, many answers given by Rumi to his disciples regarding this whole, Islamic philosophy and everything. So all of his lectures are compiled into this Fi. This is the first text of Rumi in his life that was recorded at the same time where he was, where he was giving lectures. Then there was some people who were writing it down, noting it down, and after a few years, they compiled it and it became Fi. But Rumi is known for, I mean, he's not known as a Maulana, right? He's not famous as a Maulavi. He's famous, or he's not famous as a authority over Islamic jurisprudence or Islamic philosopher. He's famous as a philosopher and poet and a lover mostly. So here is that part where this Maulavi becomes a complete ashik and a lover in this one in his life basically. So it's sort of a turning point. Bollywood की जुबान में कहा जाए तो it's a turning point in Rumi's life. So what happened was he met this guy, he met this person. His name was Shams, and Shams was from the city of Tabriz in Iran. So that's why it's called Shams e Tabrizi. Those of you who know Farsi know that Shams e Tabriz means Shams of Tabriz, or sometimes it's called Shams e Tabrizi, Tabriz ka Shams, like that. So Rumi met him, and his life was changed forever. So I'll talk a bit about Shams first. So Shams was a fakir actually. Shams was a fakir, and he was related. His lineages. His ancestors were Hassan al Sabah. I don't know. There was this guild in Persia. They were called Hassansins. The modern term assassin comes from Hassansins, and they were assassins basically, and they played a great role in the Crusades 200 years before. So Shams Tabriz was somehow related with this Hashanshin tribe, and Hassan al Sabah was the chief of those Hashansins. So he was like a fakir, and I mean, Rumi से मिलने के पहले शम्स के बारे में we don't know that much, but we only know कि he used to wander, in cities and try to learn more things and try to, uh, you know, make people aware about certain things. For example, जो वाकया ये है रूमी का कि there are many stories famous for कि शम्स और रूमी पहली बार कैसे मिले. So बहुत legends famous है and बहुत सारे किस्से मशहूर है. But there is no literary evidence to this one कि ऐसे ऐसे इस जगह पर मिले थे. We just know कि कभी तो एक बार ऐसे हुआ लाइफ में रूमी के कि they met. So, like I said, there are many qissa and there are many stories. One of them is Rumi was sitting near a house as in haud, as in a small pond and a fountain like that. So Rumi was sitting there and Rumi was writing his books and he's working. He was working, and Shams comes and he asks Rumi, ki, "What is this?" So Rumi says it is something that you will never understand because there was this social structure. Fakirs were never considered as they were considered inferior basically. And he was a Maulavi, he was a Maulana. So Rumi said, "This is something that you will never understand." Then Shams just flipped the table and all the ink and everything, the papers and everything, they fell into the pond. So Rumi was angry with this thing and he started collecting the papers. And then he found that the ink on the paper was, I mean, the paper was, the whole writing was intact. Nothing had happened to the writing and the ink basically. So it was a basically sort of a miracle thing. Okay. So, because since this is a legend, there is no way to verify this कि ऐसे ही हुआ या नहीं. We have to take it as a legend only. तो रूमी ने जाके शम्स से पूछा कि व्हाट इज दिस, ये क्या है. And then Shams says कि this is something that you will never understand because you are so captured with your knowledge and you have that gurur, you have that pride of this one कि I know everything. That's why you will never know कि how how miracles happen like that. Again, we don't need to know if this is true or not, and we can never know. But this is a legend. Another one is very similar thing that Rumi was giving lecture in his classroom once. Dars de rahe the wo, and Shams comes and he sits with his students, Rumi students, and Rumi asks him ki, "Who are you and why are you here?" So Shams asks ki, "What are you teaching?" Rumi says same thing ki, "This is something that you will never understand." And at the exact moment when Rumi says this, his books are on fire basically. And then Rumi says, "What is happening?" And Shams says, "This is something which you will never understand." Which is similar thing that knowledge is not everything. I know is not everything. Is what we should take from this story. Same story is famous. Like another story is this one. Rumi was going through the bazaar on his horse, and he saw this fakir sitting there, and that fakir asked Rumi, "Who are you and what do you do?" Same Rumi says, "This is I do some things that you will never understand." And Shams asks Rumi, "What is knowledge according to you?" Rumi answers ki Shams asked what is the noble way to live life. Rumi answers that whatever that is prescribed in the Quran and whatever our Prophet is saying is the one true way of living life. Shams replies to him that this is not true, and the only way, the only aim of life should be pursuit of knowledge, and that knowledge which takes you to yourself. वो ज्ञान, वो दानिश जो आपको खुद तक नहीं ले जाता, that knowledge is only important. बाकी सब बेकार है. So they say कि after this guftagu, after this conversation, Rumi fainted. And then when he woke up, he was like, he was ecstatic, and he wanted to find Shams and everything. So this is the first waqia, this is the first qissa where Rumi and Shams are together, and they met each other. Now this Shams influenced Rumi's life in a very, he influenced him very much. Rumi was a Maulana, he was a Maulavi, and he was, in a strictly philosophical sense, he was a bit narrowed. What Shams did was he opened the doors for him. Rumi was looking for some answers, Shams gave it to him. And this relationship that they had was a very, give and take sort of thing, because there were some things that Shams didn't know, there were some things that Rumi didn't know, and Rumi was very confined. Rumi confined himself to thoughts and rationality and knowledge, and Shams was a very free and liberated kind of spirit. So that's what they helped each other. Now this Shams Tabriz, after meeting Shams Tabriz, that Maulavi, which hated, not really hated, but he didn't prefer music and dancing basically. Before meeting Shams. After meeting Shams, with Shams, these Sufi people, what they do, these faqirs, what they do is they whirl. They turn around themselves, they revolve around themselves, and they play instruments, they play musical instruments, and they sing and they dance basically. So Rumi was introduced with this Sufi whirling, Rakso Sama. It's called Rakso Sama, and Rumi was introduced with this Rakso Sama, and basically what happened was Rumi was introduced with this whole thing, and he spent most of his time with Shams. And then the people in Konya, they started worrying about Rumi, because for them, Rumi was their Maulana, their guide. And now he was dancing with some fakir, because fakir was considered inferior anyway. And Rumi had some divine or some, some interesting experience with Shams, but people didn't know. People just thought, yeah, fakir admi ke saath, he's just, he's just spending, he's wasting his time basically. So what happened was the whole city और उसके जो कुनिया के रहने वाले जो भी थे, they started hating Shams at that point. And यहाँ पे Rumi was doing this raqs sama and everything, and people say that in that hall, in that state, जो raqs sama की जो stage है, some people call it samadhi. In Indian context we call it samadhi, or that in Marathi specifically we say that Brahmanandi Tali or something like that. So in that hall, Rumi uttered some this one uttered poetry basically. It came to him. I mean, this is again legend. So there were some people who again noted it down, and that compilation became Divan Shams. Divan yani collection of poetry, collection of poems basically, and Divan Shams yani Shams ka Divan, yani Shams ko dedicated जो किया है, that collection basically. So this was about Shams Tabriz and Divan Shams. Then what happens that people started hating Shams more and more, and one day Shams just disappears. Rumi and Shams, they spend almost 2.5 years with each other, and with this whole question answer thing, philosophical discourse, philosophical discussion, spiritual experiences, Rakso Sama, everything, and they just for 2 to 3 years they spend time together, and suddenly one night Shams is gone. Now, there are many theories. People say that Shams himself was acha. So Shams himself, they call people like Shams Afrad. Afrad yani there are some people who don't share their knowledge, but they are looking for a medium. So Shams was that knowledgeable person, and he wanted to share his knowledge through Rumi. They don't take sermons or wo ऐसे lectures में नहीं बताते. They are looking for a companion. So Shams was like that, is what people say. And basically there are many theories that some say that Rumi's son, his name was Walad, Sultan Walad. So they say that उसने ही शम्स को मार डाला. Some people say कि शम्स खुद ही he just went away somewhere, and some people say that he was just killed by the citizens of Konya, because they were very angry at him, since because of Shams, Rumi was separated from, and Rumi went away from that teachings and spiritual discourse and philosophical discourse to the people basically. So Shams dies. I mean, Shams disappears. There is no such evidence that he died, or but he just disappears. And then Rumi becomes very, it's a very big, it's very big strike to him that a friend, a companion, and his very best philosophical guide also, because in his ash'ar, in his ghazal, Rumi has mentioned Shams Tabriz as his guide, his peer, so his mentor. So Rumi is very much, he's into pain and he's into agony that his companion and his peer, he went away and he just disappeared. And then Rumi started searching him all over the place. And there was this incident, again, it's a legend, it's just a story. We don't know if that's true or not. So he was looking for Shams in Bazaar of Kunya. And there was this shops of goldsmith. There was this goldsmith. And they were doing this thing with the gold. They were basically making plates of gold. And there was this one specific goldsmith, he was called Zarkobe. So when Rumi heard that वो जो ठोकने का sound है, when Rumi heard that, he paid everything, he gave everything to the Zarkob, and he said, keep doing that, because that beats he remembered, that beats, Rumi remembered that Rakso Sama because of those beats. And he remembered Shams because of those beats and everything. So it is said that Rumi started whirling in that bazaar of Konya for like 7 to 10 days straight. So it's again, it's just sort of like a mythological story. You can just call it a legend and something like that. There's no way to find proofs and everything for this one, but it is again because the life, like I said, life of Rumi's life is very poetic, and it is what actually Shams is saying, that you don't have to put everything in rationality and everything in akal and everything. You don't need to be like proof kidhar hai, evidence kidhar hai, like that. So you just have to enjoy it because it's the whole his life is like a poem. So Shams disappears, and then Rumi makes. So Shams was kind of like a muse for Rumi and his poetry, and then Rumi makes Zarkobe his muse. Now this guy Zarko, he knows what happened with Shams before, because he was also an illiterate goldsmith, and Rumi was a Maulana. So Zarkov also started writing poetry that is included in Divan Shams. So Zarkov says that why should people look at me as a goldsmith? Rumi sees Shams in me. I'm not Zarkov for him. I'm Shams for him because of that that gold plate wala incident. He says that Rumi sees Shams in me. I'm no one to him. So like that, he's also trying to be fine with this one. Then Zarkov also dies, but Zarkov, it's not evident that people killed Zarkov or something like that. But he's there. But after like 12 years, he dies. Then there is another guy, Chleby, Hamsuddin Chleby. This Chleby was the first disciple of Rumi, and he recorded a lot of Rumi's poetry, especially the one that Rumi recited in Hal, that state. Chalebi was the one who noted down his poetry and noted down his sermons as well. So Chalebi के recommendation पे, Chalebi के suggestion पे, Rumi later on wrote Masnavi is another book by Rumi, and it was because of Chalebi, Rumi started writing Masnavi, and Masnavi is actually incomplete. Rumi died in 1273, and Masnavi remains, an incomplete work of Rumi, basically. And in his poetry, again, Rumi has mentioned Shams as his muse, Shams as his peer, and this one mentor. He's also mentioned Zarkob as the Motreb. Motreb, yani, those who play the musical instrument, they're called Motreb. And because of them, you dance. So they are very important in poetry in general. Just say Urdu poetry, we have Saki, we have Rakib. So these characters are there. So similarly, Motreb is also very like a famous element in poetry, Persian poetry basically. So Zarkob is there. Chalebi is also there in many letters of Rumi. He has praised Chalebi, this Hamsuddin Chalebi. So this was about a very general outline of Rumi's life. Then we'll get to the part of Rumi as a historical figure. तो मैंने अभी जो भी कहा, it was about, जैसे मैंने कहा कि इसका आपको एविडेंस नहीं है, इसका लिटरेरी सोर्स कोई नहीं, but we'll talk about literary sources कौन से. So there are three main sources. First one is Ibtida Name or Walad Name. Ibtida Name means book of beginning, or it's also called Walad Name. It means book of Walad. So Rumi's son was called Walad, Sultan Walad, and he saw his father going from a Maulavi to a complete Sufi and a complete uh, liberated and that kind of person, and he noted it down. He noted everything down from his early stages, where Rumi was, Rumi just started becoming Maulana, and he started giving lectures. तो सुल्तान वालद has written कि पहले रूमी के जो शागिर्द जो स्टूडेंट्स थे वो बहुत कम थे, but he come as in he said, he used this word sad hazar. There were only 100,000 first, and then later they increased. So ऐसे कुछ poetically he has he's mentioned Rumi and his the incidents in Rumi's life basically. Then like I said, there is this Hassan al-Din Chalebi. He was also there in Rumi. He also noted many poems by ghazals, mainly by Rumi, that were supposedly or apparently recited in that hall. And he's done a great work, and because of him, Rumi is preserved through manuscripts basically. And the third and the last one is Aflaki. Aflaki was also a biographer of Rumi. He wrote a book, Manaqib al-Arifin. Manaqib al-Arifin उसमें he wrote from Bahauddin, that is Rumi's father, then Rumi's son, and then again Rumi's grandson. ऐसे करके सात लोगों की biography is written, अफलाकी. So there are three main sources. So anywhere in the world, रूमी की biography अगर आप पढ़ने जाओगे, तो you will find these three references there. So these are the three main references. इसके अलावा रूमी ने जो खत लिखे, रूमी ने जो letters लिखे उनकी life में, they are also included and they're also compiled and published later as a set of manuscripts basically. So these are all sources for historical Rumi, because what we saw were that defies common sense. Whatever we the stories that we came across earlier, books on fire and everything, so they are a bit they're a bit supernatural, is what we call miracle hai wo. But this is whatever is written in this one is just praising Rumi. And I mean, here are all we also find some miracle incidents in these texts, but they are more towards the reality, because the central aim for these guys is to record Rumi as a person and write the biography of this one, Rumi. So this was about Rumi and his life and his sources, basically, literary sources. I will talk about Divan. The Divan, as in Shams, Divan is Shams. This Divan is Shams is also sometimes called Divan Kabir. Divan Kabir. Kabir yani great. So great poetic collection like that. And now, most important thing is Rumi met Shams when he was 38. Rumi didn't write any poetry until he was 38. Shams ke milne ke baad he started writing this whole thing. I mean, like I said, whatever you want to believe, if you want to believe that he wrote poetry, or the poems and the ghazals came to him, like he recited it in that hall. So he just started this poetry thing after meeting Shams, after 38 years of his life. And this Divan Shams, he's written this Divan Shams, he's composed this throughout his life. I mean, we see some stages in this Divan. For example, there is this Ghazal Shanibe Amke Safar Mikoni Mekon. And I've heard that you are going to suffer, suffer as in you are traveling. Mekon, yani please don't do that. तो ऐसे जो कुछ गजल हैं, उसमें वी फाइंड दीज स्टेजेस. फॉर एग्जांपल, जब शम्स और रूमी एक साथ थे, एंड रूमी को शम्स को जब पता चला कि देयर आर पीपल इन कोनिया हु हेट हिम, तो ही डिसाइडेड टू लीव कोनिया एंड लीव रूमी अलोन विद दीज गाइस बेसिकली. देन रूमी रिक्वेस्ट्स हिम कि आई जस्ट हर्ड कि यू आर गोइंग समवेयर, प्लीज डोंट डू. तो उन्होंने वो गजलें जो लिखी हैं, तो ऐसे जो स्पेसिफिक गजल्स हैं वो भी इस दीवाने शम्स में है. So that's why I'm saying this one is composed throughout his life after meeting Shams. There are almost 3,000 plus ghazals, in 3,200 something ghazals in this Divan-e-Shams. So 3,000 ghazals is a big deal basically. And the contents of this ghazal is, like I said, Rumi is mentioning Shams as his peer, as his mentor, as his guide, spiritual guide basically. And he's talking about that ecstasy, he's talking about that hal, he's talking about that divine wine. For example, some in Persian, wine is called bade. So sometimes he's talking about, I mean, there are many, scholars and researchers who get confused with this one, that sometimes he's talking about metaphorical wine and sometimes he's talking about literal wine. For example, once he says in a ghazal that I have, I am fond of that wine which doesn't fit in any cup. So clearly, this is metaphorical wine. And in one ghazal, in one share, he's saying that your wine, oh Saki, your wine has made my jam wet. So I want dusra jam basically. I want jam digar. I want dusra jam. So he's literally talking about that. Is what I think. He's talking about the literal wine and not the this one, not the metaphorical wine. But because of wine and then halal and haram in Islam and then everything, the connotations that wine had, or the in general alcohol has, because of it, the people are very, I mean, those who don't want to separate Rumi from Islam, they are like, no, Rumi is constantly talking about metaphorical wine only. Those who want to, disconnect Islam and Rumi, they are saying, no, Rumi is always drinking real wine only. So there are people discussing, and what I believe is we should just read the poetry and we should make our mind for ourselves basically. So that's about ecstasy and divine wine. Then the most important part is aql and ishq. So these Sufis like Shams Tabriz, yeah, they give a very for them, ishq is very important. Aql means rationality, right? Rationality and in general, this notion that you have knowledge and critical thinking and all of these things. So these Sufis say that aql is not enough. This only aql is not enough. Ishq is also necessary, and for most of the Sufis, ishq is like a ishq is not in because of Bollywood. Ishq हमने बहुत ही we have reduced it to something very chota thing. But for these guys, ishq is not something that you just write in songs, but it is like it's a state to be in. It's a perspective. So they believe that we have five senses, and ishq is like that sixth sense through which we perceive the world completely differently. Okay. So once you are in ishq, Rumi is saying that ishq bash ke mast, ishqast har che hast. And you be in love, for love is everything that exists. So once you're in love, you see love everywhere. And this love can be translated as God's grace. You find God's presence everywhere, like that. You are excited by everything, by sunset, by the moon, by everything basically. So that is what they're trying to say. That is a complete different perspective on ishq basically. And I mean, we are familiar with ishq and mohabbat because of Bollywood, and it's very, like I said, it's very reduced version of this one. So aql versus ishq, there is this constant struggle between these two. And aql is the notion that I am thinking. तो उसमें I आता है, me आता है. तो the Sufis, the basic tenet of Sufism is to annihilate yourself into that divine entity, whatever that is. The names will change, but the philosophy stays the same. That you are a particular of something universal and divine entity, and you should erase yourself and merge with the divine one. So as long as you have akl, you won't be able to do that. The moment you will have ishq, as in the perspective, you will start seeing that divine everywhere and within yourself also. So this was about akla and ishq. Then there is this hal. So Sufis, they call this hal. Like I said, some people, I mean, Indian context, we say samadhi, like that. So in this hal, they recite some sentences. They recite poetry. They utter some words, and most of the times these words are blasphemous in nature, as in they are infidel. Sometimes they're called infidels because of these verses. For example, there was this Sufi saint who said, "Ana al Haq." Mansur al Hilaj was his name, and he said, "Ana al Haq," yani I am the supreme God, which is very similar with Aham Brahmasmi. Very similar. Al Haq is one of the 99 names of Allah, which means Al Haqiqat, yani the supreme reality. So he said, "I am the supreme reality," and for that, usko dhar pe chadha diya. I mean, he was crucified for that one. So this hal is very important for the Sufis, and this hal is achieved when you are doing dhikr or zikr. Dhikr or zikr is that ritual or is that procession where Sufis dance around themselves and they whirl and they play the musical instruments and this one. So this was about hal and these Sufistic verses that come out of that hal basically. And the last ghazal, so they say again, it's a legend that Rumi wrote a last ghazal before his death. Before, when he was sleeping, he wrote this ghazal, and it is recorded in this one, the Divan Shams, and it is said that Sultan Walar, his son, recorded that last ghazal, and then Rumi went away, and it is that last ghazal is in Divan Shams basically. So, like I said, Divan Shams was composed throughout his life. Even the last ghazal is there in Divan. So Divan Shams is not really incomplete, if you look at it like that. But Masnavi is definitely incomplete. We'll go to the Masnavi. But before that, I have some beautiful this one shares from Divan Shams. Those who can read Persian, they can. I mean, they'll be able to decipher this one. But the first share goes like Bajushi kema aul sharim bejuz ishq digar kar ne dare. He's saying Bejushi, then he is saying that boil as in, be with passion, for we are the people of poetry. कि माँ आला शायरी, we are poets. So you should have that zeal, you should have that passion because we are the people of poetry. And then he's saying, Bejuz ishq, digar kaur ne dori. And except for love, we don't have anything to do. Bejuz ishq, digar kaur ne dori. कोई दूसरा काम ही नहीं है हमें करने को. Bejuz ishq, ishq के सिवा. So this was like share. Then another share goes like this. This is not one ghazal. Huh? These are four separate pieces from four separate ghazals. And this one is Har nafas sawa ishq mi rasadas chaporast. Ma be falk mi ravi mazm tamasha kerast. हर नफस आवाज इश्क यानी एवरी नफस एवरी ब्रेथ एवरी मोमेंट मुझे इश्क की आवाज सुनाई दे रही है एज छपो रास्त यानी फ्रॉम लेफ्ट एंड राइट मुझे हर घड़ी इश्क की आवाज सुनाई दे रही है एंड देन ही गोज ऑन सेइंग मा बे फल्क मी रवीम एज में तमाशा के रास्त यानी वी आर बाउंड टू गो टू द फलक वी आर बाउंड टू गो टू द हेवंस व्हाई वी आर डूइंग तमाशा हियर तमाशा इन पर्शियन इट मींस साइट सीइंग टहलना wandering. So he's saying like that. We have ultimately bound to the heavens. We are supposed to go up there. Why are we wasting our time with this one? So this Har Nafas Awaz Ishq, he's saying that Ishq is calling me from the Falak. Ishq is calling me from the Aflaq constantly. And he may be referring to God or that, like I said, divine entity that we were talking about. Then another share is this one. Ey qawm be haj rafte kujaid, mashu khamin jas, bi'aid. It's a very beautiful share. He's saying to the qawm, he's saying to the group of people who are going to Hajj. Ey qawm be haj rafte, those who are going to Hajj, kujaid, where are you all? Where are you all? Mashu khamin jas, the beloved is here only. Bi'aid, lota. So he's saying that you don't have to go to the Hajj. You don't have to go to Makkah, Medina to meet the beloved, to meet God. Now, Ashuk Haminja, the God or the beloved is here only. Come about. And this last one is the Rubaiyat, and which is Rumi is famous for this one that out beyond the idea of right doing and wrong doing, there is a field. I will meet you there. It's a bit mistranslation, but it goes like this one: as kufr vaze Islam barun sahraist, maurabe mione an faza saudaist, arif chubedan rasid sarra benehat. Ne kufr ne Islam ne anja jais. Rumi is saying kufr or Islam ke par, yani the ideas of infidelity and faith, or this one iman is what it's called in Islam. There is a sahra beyond these ideas, yani there is a desert, ek biyaban hai is moral immoral and sahi galat ke par. And he's saying Marabe miyone an faza sudaist. I want to go there. So it's a bit mistranslation. He's not saying मैं तुझे वहां मिलूंगा. He's saying I want to go there. I want to go in that field where there is no Islam and Kufr. Then he's saying Arif Chubedan Rasid Sarra Benehat. He's saying whoever Arif yani Sufi person. Whoever Arif comes to that place, Sarra Benehat. Then he's literally saying वो अपना सर वहां टेकता है basically. As in, there are two meanings of this one. एक तो टेकना as in like praising, and the second one is he rest. That person rests there basically. So he's saying whoever comes here stays here. Ne kufr ne Islam ne anja jas. Yani there is no kufr or Islam for that person. That's why he's saying I want to go there. So these are some examples from his Divan. Then we'll go to Masnavi. Masnavi is a type of poetry. As in, जैसे हमारे जैसे English literature में we have sonnet, ballad and things like that. So in Persian poetry we have ghazal, we have qasideh, we have rubai, and we have masnavi. So masnavi is a type of poetry. So we don't get, we will not go in the technical parts of this, types of poetry and everything. But masnavi is also called masnavi e ma'navi. Yani it's like a ma'navi yani spiritual. So what they're essentially saying is this is spiritual masnavi basically. So masnavi is called masnavi e ma'navi, and is उसमें 25,000 shares are there. 25,000 shares. एक शेर में दो बेत यानी दो lines होती हैं. So 25,000 shares, it means 50,000 lines, beats actually. So most of the, like if you, if you come across this Firdausi and his Shahnameh is written in Masnavi format. So these are generally long poems. So Masnavi is also very big, this one. And it is divided into 6 daftar or 6 books basically. And like I said, it's incomplete. And this Masnavi is filled with stories and metaphors and everything. And through this one, Rumi is trying to explain to us what what he thinks ishq is, what he thinks khuda is, God is, what he thinks, you know, tawheed is. Like for example, जो मैंने यहाँ लिखा है कि he is talking about this tawheed and zabr qadr and many other Islamic concepts. Like tawheed यानी union, मिलन. तो the divine entity and yourself is what I kept talking about. तो उनका जो unification है, तो Rumi is talking about that. Then Rumi is also talking about zabr qadr यानी you know, predetermined as in destiny and free will, like that. So there are many things that Rumi is, you know, covering in this one. And the first poem of this Masnavi is famous as Nei Nama. Nei Nama yani it's like a song of the Basri. Nei yani Basri, flute. So it's famous as a song of the reed actually. And Rumi is comparing. So I'll get back to Nei Nama first. The last point is there that Allama Iqbal is calling Masnavi as Pahlavi ki Quran. Pahlavi yani Persian. Persian language में he's saying this is the Persian language वाला Quran, Masnavi को. So like I said, the first chapter of or the first poem of Masnavi is about Nainama. Nainama यानी बांसुरी का इस्तिया, बांसुरी का मेटाफोर दिया है रूमी ने. And he's saying that जैसे बांसुरी को हम तोड़ते हैं, and बांसुरी is mostly cut from bamboo की, you know, bamboo plantation and everything. तो उसको नेस्तान बोलते हैं, पर्शियन में it's called नेस्तान. तो he's saying जैसे नेस्तान से हम बैम्बू तोड़ कर आते हैं, उसको कट करते हैं, उसको जलाते हैं, उसमें सुराख बनाते हैं, and then we make बांसुरी out of it, make ney out of that thing, and then we say it's you know, it's very sweet and it's very melodious. But Rumi is saying the Basri is actually complaining, the Ney is actually complaining because you people have cut Basri from its loved ones. तो बांसुरी का जो ओरिजिन है वहां से तुमने उसको कट करके लिया है. तो the बांसुरी is actually complaining, the बांसुरी is actually lamenting, Ney is actually lamenting, and then he's saying we are also like that. We are from somewhere else and we are cut from that origin. And this whole thing, this Raksa Sama, this poetry and everything is actually it's the dard, it's the pain. And like we confuse Basri's pain with melody, we are confusing our own pain with melody and kya sher likhe and kya this one. And so he's saying that we are in constant pain because we are separated from that divine, and one day we'll merge with that divine. In Quran there is this verse, inna ilahi wa inna ilahi rajun, yani we have come from Allah and to Allah will go. So same Rumi is saying, "Ma se bala mo bala mi ravim." Yani we are from above, and above we are headed. So like I said, you can just swap the names, and you'll get the same philosophy. Even this philosophy is very similar to Advait Vedanta philosophy, which we have in Indian subcontinent or Indian context में कहा जाए तो. They also believe the same thing, that there is something divine which they call Brahma, and we Atma is the particulars of this one. Being a philosophy student, I need to use these references basically. So this was from Masnavi. Yes, I have a short story for you guys. Let me just take a look at how much time we have. Okay, we have time. So this is the story of Masnavi, story from Masnavi. I'll just present a concise version of this one. So इसमें Rumi is talking about Chinian and Rumian. Rumian यानी Greek. तो जैसे मैंने कहा रोमन लोगों को रूमी बुलाते थे, तो here Rumi is saying Rumian यानी Greco-Romans, like that. तो एक बार हुआ यूं कि चीनी लोग और रूमी लोग थे, Chinese and Romans were there, and Chinian guftan, this is the line, the first share is this one, Chinian guftan kima na khawshtar, Rumian guftan maro karofer. Chinese people said that we are very good at art, we are very good at painting, and Romans said that no, actually we are better. Then guft sultan imtihan khaham dareen kaz shamaha kis dardawe guzin. Then the king said, let's have a test, let's a competition karte hain, and then dekhte kiska dawa sach hai. Chini on sad rang as shah khastan, pas khazine baaz kar an rajman. What the Chinese said, acha chalo. So this king gave two identical rooms to both of these groups basically, and he said that आप इस कमरे को सजाओ, and then we'll see कि कौन अच्छा artist है. So the Chinese people said that bring paint, बहुत ज़्यादा paint लाओ, and इतना paint उन्होंने मंगाया कि the खजीने यानी treasury, जो उस राजा की जो शाह की treasury थी वो खत्म होने लगी, इतना paint उन्होंने मंगवाया, and they just painted it. Then Rumi goes on saying, Rumiyan guftan ne naqsh ne rang, dar khud ayat kar jazda fe jang. The Roman people or the Greek people, what they said was, these Chinese are they're going to put paint on top of this one, on top of their, on the walls of their room. What we should do is we should polish the wall, because then I'll get to the part where Rumi is concluding the whole thing. So what they did was they just polished the wall, and Rumi, the first part ends here of the story, that they started polishing the wall. Then when Chinese were finished with their work, they started उन्होंने ढोल बजाना वगैरह शुरू किया, and then that sultan comes, and then he sees, and then he's like, oh, this is really great because the whole room is excellently painted and this one, and he was like कि अभी तो रोमन नहीं जीतेंगे because you are clearly good at this, but I have to see what they did. Then he goes on to that Roman room, and he sees that what Romans have done is they have polished the whole thing, and वो उन्होंने इतना polish किया है कि that almost looks like a mirror. So that small room becomes like an infinite, it feels like, and it seems like, it looks like an infinite rooms, basically infinite set of rooms in this one. Now Rumi is saying, now Rumi is comparing to this one, ki we are like that room, and we should be, he's saying, Rumiyan chun Sufiyan as feather. These Romans are like Sufis. Know this one, oh feather, and your friend, know this one, that these Roman people are like Sufis, because they know that putting outer layers will give you nothing, will achieve nothing. Instead, you should reflect in yourself, and you should find yourself in your own self. Then only you'll be truly, that is the true purpose of this thing. That is true art, basically. So this is how Rumi is using these metaphors in this one. I mean, painted room, and putting layers on top of it. And instead of that, you should look into yourself and reflect. Then you'll find infinity. So this is what Rumi is saying, and then he's using another metaphor, like he's saying, अगर बादल चमकता है, if that abr, if a cloud is shining, it's not because the cloud has emitting light. It's because of the moon. It's because of the moon cloud is shining. So it's like that. जो आप बाहर जितने भी परते लगाओगे, बाहर जितने भी layers लगाओगे, they are going to look good because of the inside only. So polish your inside first. This was a beautiful story, and this was a beautiful metaphor. Then we'll move on to poetic meters. This is a bit grammatic, prosody, and poetic grammar basically. तो जैसे मैंने कहा कि there are many translations of Rumi's poetry and everything, and people often ask me, people often send me this uh, quote, and they're just like, hey, ये Rumi का है क्या, ये Rumi का है क्या? So there's really no way to find, because like I said, 3,000 ghazals and 25,000 this one shares. That's a lot of this thing to, in general, amount of poetry basically. But in Persian also we have that problem. In Persian also they have this thing where there are many quotes. They just claim they are just attributed to Rumi basically. So there are some tests, there are some parameters to see if this is Rumi's or not basically. Okay. So for example, this is the poetic meter. This is one of the many meters in Persian poetry. This is called fa'ilatun fa'ilatun fa'ilun. फाइलातुन फाइलातुन फाइलुन इज अ मीटर इन पर्शियन. अगर इसमें वो गजल बैठती है, दैट शेर एंड बेत, इफ इट फिट्स इनटू दिस मीटर, देन इट इज प्रोबेबली रिटन बाय रूमी, इज व्हाट दे से. तो अभी तो ऐसे नहीं होता कि कोई नई गजल मिल गई एंड वी डोंट नो ये रूमी ने लिखी क्या, बिकॉज वी हैव द मैन्युस्क्रिप्ट्स इन सेट में मिलते हैं वो, राइट. तो वी हैव सेट में मैन्युस्क्रिप्ट्स, तो बेसिकली ऑल ऑफ दीज इज बाय रूमी. बट अगेन, this is the parameter to check if this is Rumi's poetry or not. So for example, this first share I've written here, again I'm sorry for those who can't read Persian, but I will explain this to you. तो पहला शेर है मसनवी का कि बेशनऊ इन नई चुन शिकायत मी कुनत आज जुदाई हो हिकायत मी कुनत. दिस लुक, सुनो इस बांसुरी को, सुनो इस नई को कैसे ये शिकायत कर रही है, सुनो कैसे ये जुदाई की हिकायत कर रही है. जुदाई की हिकायत यानी शी इज टेलिंग द स्टोरी ऑफ हिकायत यानी स्टोरी. जुदाई की हिकायत कर रही है. शी इज टेलिंग द स्टोरी ऑफ सेपरेशन, हाउ शी गॉट सेपरेटेड फ्रॉम दैट नेस्तान. सो दिस इज द फर्स्ट लाइन. तो उस इफ यू टेक दिस लाइन एंड फिट ट्राई टू इसको कत्ती करना बोलते हैं, यानी यू कट विथ अकॉर्डिंग टू द मीटर. सो इट इज लाइक दैट. बेशनऊ ने फाइलातुन चुन शिकायत फाइलातुन Mikonat, fa'ilun. Same thing with as judai, fa'ilatun, ha hikayat, fa'ilatun, mikonat, fa'ilun. So this meter, this is a very, uh, uh, this share fits in that meter basically. This Failun is so famous in Persian poetry that people started calling it Wazne Masnavi because Masnavi is mostly written in this meter. So people started calling it Masnavi meter only. So this is one of the tests through which you can really know if this is written, and this is the most, I think, around 35,000 shares ko Rumi has used this Failun. So this is the most used meter, and these are four other meters. I mean, out of many that Rumi has used. First one is, I mean, अगर आप उर्दू शेरो शायरी से वाकिफ हैं तो आपको ये आप इससे भी आशना होंगे. दिस इज मफऊल, मफाइल और मफाइल फ़ाइल. Then there is another one failun. Then third one is mustafailun. This is all in you construct poetry in these meters. And maghul, sorry, maf'ul fa'ilatun. So these are permutation combinations of these letters basically. And just in Marathi mein, we have this one la laga.
Galala, Galala.
Yeah. So like that, this is like that. They have used these, letters for meters. So these are four other meters. Yes. Then there is this point of takhallus of Rumi. Takhallus is the pen name. जैसे गालिब खस्ता के बगैर कौन से काम बंद है. This गालिब खस्ता, this गालिब, this name appears in mostly the makta of the sher. Makta is the makta of the ghazal. Makta means the last share of the ghazal. Last two lines of the ghazal is makta. उसमें mostly the poet puts his takhallus, his or her takhallus. And this one, like in Marathi, we have tuka mane, nama mane, same thing. So Rumi, about Rumi, तो Rumi का कोई तखल्लुस नहीं है, because the only the first parameter for this one for identifying Rumi's poetry is identify the takhallus. If it is Rumi, like for example, if it is Tukamane, then it is by Tukaram Maharaj. So like that, but Rumi doesn't have any takhallus. Only two takhallus he uses. First one is Shams, because he is dedicating all of his ghazals to Shams. Now Shams also means sun, Suraj, Aftab. So he is doing pun also there. Like for example, in one beat he's saying, Shams Tabriz, Shams Alhaq Tabriz, you rise from the east and illuminate our hearts. So he's like talking about the sun, and he's addressing this to Shams also. But another important takhallus that Rumi uses is khamush, and it's very it's very important because he's using this khamush as in जो हमारा उर्दू में खामोश है, is the same thing. And he's very fond of not talking basically. Rumi, after writing 3,000 ghazals and 25,000 shares, he's very fond of not talking anything. So he's constantly saying that khamush bash, be silent. And at the same time, it's takhallus. So he's making that pun also. Khamush bash, yani he's telling this to himself also. So ek bet we have here, khamush agar thabani bi harf gumani. He's saying khamush agar thabani, khamush, and he's addressing to this one also, and he's saying खामोश as in be silent also. अगर तवानी, अगर तुम कर सकते हो, खामोश और अगर तुम कर सकते हो, be harf gumani, and he's saying without words try to talk. खामोश हो जाओ और अगर कर सकते हो तो बगैर अल्फाज के बात करो, बगैर reciting or uttering words, you should try to communicate, is what he's saying. He's again, it's very philosophically and spiritual plane pe he's saying these things ki without harf bolna, bagair alfaz ke bolna, and everything like that. Then there is another sher which is very famous in Kolban Bach's translation. Khamush kun ze phoy benishin chun masti oin kinare ba mast. He's saying khamush kun yani be silent. And then he's saying ze phoy benishin, and sit down. Chun masti yani nasha, mast, sarmasti basically. He's saying chun masti because you are must, because you are intoxicated, because you are drunk. And in kinare ba mast, yani this is the edge of the roof. He's saying we are just sitting at the edge of the roof, so just shut up, just be khamosh and just sit with me, is what he's trying to say with this one. This was about takhallus of Rumi. There are only two takhallus that Rumi mostly uses, and the last part is me being interested in philosophy and philosophers. Rumi has also मतलब मैंने नहीं कुछ किया. I come across Rumi's poetry जिसमें he's mentioned other philosophers also. So he's in one of his शेर he's saying this to Ishq. He's addressing this to Ishq. इसमें उसने प्लेटो का जिक्र किया है. रूमी ने प्लेटो का जिक्र किया है. In Persian, Plato is called Aflatun. In Persian, Plato is called Aflatun. So Rumi इसका पहला वाला शेर है कि शाद बास इश्क खुश सौदाएमा ए तबीब जुमला इल्तहाएमा, यानी एक खुशहाली लाने वाले इश्क, तू शाद रहे यानी हैप्पी रहे, हमारी सारी बीमारियों का बस तुझसे इलाज रहे. So again, Rumi is seeing this ishq as something completely out of this world and it's going to cure everything. Every जो भी आप में कमियां हैं, खामियां हैं, this ishq is going to cure this one. And then he goes on saying, ए दवाए नखवतो नामूसमा. Now, ishq is not just it won't cure only your illness and diseases, but it will also cure your nakhwat and namus. Nakhwat and namus यानी आपको जो गुरूर है, आप में जो प्राइड है, ईगो है. तो रूमी सेइंग ए दवाए नखवतो नामुस मा, you are the dawa. Ishq is the dawa for our pride and gurur, for our for our this one, for our ego. Ishq is the dawa. And then he goes on saying, "Eh to aflatun jalinusema." Rumi is saying, you are Aflatun and Jalinus. Now, Jalinus is again another name of philosopher. The Greek philosopher Galen was called Jalinus in Persian. So Rumi is saying, "Eh to Aflatun Jalinusema," and he is talking to Ishq. And he's saying, you are like Aflatun and you are like Jalinus to us. Because it was believed that philosophers have, they solve everything. They solve every problem basically. So he's actually saying you solve every problem of us. And again, Aflatun is saying specifically because Plato is famous for his two-world theory, is what we call in philosophy two-world theory. So he believes that there is some, there is this world of forms. Plato की theory है ये कि he believes there is this world of forms जहाँ पे everything का जो essence है that exists. Is again spiritualism के पास नजदीक जा रही है ये whole philosophy. That he's saying कि for example this chairness is there in that world basically. तो काइंड ऑफ सुपरनैचुरल एंड आउटवर्ल्डली ये कोनोटेशंस जो प्लेटो के साथ जुड़े हुए हैं, सिमिलरली रूमी इज अटैचिंग दैट टू इश्क एंड ही इज कॉलिंग अफलातून एंड गेलन, यू आर आर प्लेटो एंड यू आर आर गेलन. And then Diogenes is one of my favorite philosophers. Diogenes is famous as a cynic philosopher, and Rumi has mentioned, not mentioned him, but his narrative in this ghazal. He's saying, "The sheikh bao chirag hami gasht gard shahr kas di wudud malulam o insan marzust." यानी he's saying कल रात कोई पीर था, कोई शेख यानी कोई दाना आदमी, like साधु संत types. He was बहुत चिराग हमी गश्त गर्द शहर, एक लैंप लेके, एक चिराग लेके सारे शहर में घूम रहा था. कह रहा था कि एज दी वो दुद मलूलम, दी वो दुद यानी इन क्रीचर से, इन जानवरों से मैं तंग आ गया हूँ, मलूल हो गया हूँ, तंग आ गया हूँ. इंसानों की मेरी आरजू है, इंसान, मुझे इंसान चाहिए. बिकॉज ही इज सेइंग दे इस शहर में कोई इंसान नहीं रहते, सब जानवर रहते हैं. This is very similar to Diogenes की story. Diogenes was a cynic philosopher, and कहा जाता है कि एक दोपहर में Diogenes lit this lamp, and he was looking for something. And when people asked him, "What are you looking for?" he said, "I'm looking for an honest man." So this is very related with. I mean, this is actually a reference for Diogenes like that. So Diogenes is there, and Almari, another Arabic philosopher, Almari, and Avicenna. You must have heard of Avicenna, or it's called Ibn Sina. So in the last ghazal, in the last share of last ghazal by Rumi, the one that I mentioned previously, there is this share, "Bas kon ke bhi khudam man bartho hunarafzai, tarikh bu aligu tanbi bul alakon." Rumi is saying, these are actually last words of Rumi. He is saying, "Bas kon yani bas kar. It's enough, बस कर कि बेखुदा मन बरथो हुनर अफजाई, कि मैं बेखुद हो गया हूँ." एंड यू आर एनकरेजिंग दैट वन. मैं बेखुद हो गया हूँ बिकॉज ऑफ दिस लाइफ दैट ही हैड. इज सेइंग कि नाउ इनफ, फॉर आई एम बेखुद, मैं अब बेखुद हो गया हूँ. एंड यू आर एनकरेजिंग दैट. तारीख बू अली कुन, बू अली यानी बू अली सीना, बू अली यानी बू अली सीना यानी इब्ने सीना. इब्ने सीना को या अबे सीना इस फिलोसोफर को दे यूज्ड टू कॉल बू अली. He's saying Tarikh Abu Alihu, but Tanbi Abu Allah Khon. Abu Allah is another philosopher named Almari. Almari was a blind philosopher actually. तो ही इज सेइंग कि मैं अब जा रहा हूँ, बस हो गया कि मैं बेखुद हो रहा हूँ, बेखुद हो गया हूँ, एंड आई एम जस्ट लीविंग दिस, आई एम गोइंग फॉर दैट लाइट. बट जाने से पहले यू शुड लेट मी नो, यू शुड टेल मी तारीख है बू अली. तारीख यानी टेल मी द हिस्ट्री ऑफ बू अली, यानी इब्ने सीना ने क्या कहा, उसकी फिलोसफी क्या है, ये मुझे बताओ. एंड तनबी अबूल अला कौन, यानी तनबी यानी ही सेइंग टीच मी द टीचिंग्स ऑफ Almari. So he's actually saying, I'm going into the darkness, or you can say light. And before that, just tell me what these philosophers are saying, so that my journey will be uh, easy. So this was about the presentation. I'll just go to the last slide, and this I agree with this much very much. This one share in one of his ghazals, Rumi is saying, "Bas kon koin guft zaban, hast hijab dilo jan, kaush nabudi se zaban, waqif o dawana o dilaman." Again, he's saying, "Bas kon yani bas karo, kahin guft zaban." This language and these words is like hijab on dil and jan. और मेरे दिल पे और जान पे दिस लैंग्वेज एंड दिस वर्ड इज जस्ट अ पर्दा, इज जस्ट लाइक एन हिजाब. काश नबूदी जबान वाकिफ. काश यानी वी से दैट इन उर्दू की, काश कितना अच्छा होता अगर नबूदी, अगर मैं नहीं होता इस जबान से वाकिफ. सेइंग कितना अच्छा होता अगर मैं जबान बोलना ही नहीं जानता, कितना अच्छा होता अगर मैं ये नहीं जानता कि वर्ड्स क्या है. that would have been easier basically is what he's trying to say. So this was all about Rumi and his life and works basically. Again, I've tried to बहुत ही कंसाइज वर्जन मैंने आपके सामने आज पेश किया है, बट दिस वाज अबाउट इट. सो इफ यू हैव एनी क्वेश्चंस जस्ट लेट मी चेक, देयर इज सम मैसेज इन. खूब, यस, इश्क हकीकी एंड इश्क मिजाजी. खूब. So if you have any questions, you can let me know. And if you know anything about Rumi that I haven't mentioned, if you have any questions that I haven't covered, let me know.
If anybody has any questions now, they can unmute and ask.
I just wanted to know about the study group, a little detail. What was the study group all about?
Okay.
Is this part of that, or is it an introduction to study group? I was not there at the beginning and so not aware.
No. This is not an introduction to study group. Study group is actually study group. We started as a study group for art and architecture. But then, as we are venturing into various things, we have decided to make this as a general study group, wherein every month a scholar or a researcher would talk about the topic of, his research for the understanding of everyone. So those who are interested, so we have a database of about 150 people already, and we can keep adding them to. And we will keep informing you about every month's topic and the speaker. And you can decide if that topic is of interest to you or however. And if any one of you would like to present your presentation, your research work in this study group, you are most welcome. So you can approach us and let us know that what is the topic that you are interested in, or what is the topic on which you are working on, and we could decide things accordingly. So this is an open forum basically, and this is free for all. It's just that we need registration so that we have we know whom to contact and stuff like that. And also the Google Meet limitations, so we know how many can we accommodate.
We have a question from Abhijit Joshi. He's saying Persian script you read was from right to left. Yes, it is from right to left. And at Sambhasha, we conduct a course for Persian language and Persian script also. We have a basic and this one intermediate course. And you can find more details about this from our page. Quite nice presentation. Thank you. And Subhankar is asking, why was Rumi attracted to Hanafi school? So Hanafi school is very much related with Ali. And these Sufi people, they worship Ali very much, because Ali is the first Musalman, is what they believe. Because Prophet was the Prophet. He's not. He's like outwardly, right? Prophet is outwardly, but Ali became the first Musalman in this world. So he's considered as very important by Sufis especially. And we know that Sunni and Shia, these two branches, and Shia actually, they they, uh, they think that, I mean, they believe that Ali should be the successor, and Ali should be the Khalifa, and Ali was the Khalifa. In fact, is what they believe. So this Hanafi school is related with this one very. uh, अली के अली से ताल्लुक रखते हैं, तो that's why this whole Sufistic philosophy has influenced Hanafi school, as well as they have interacted with each other. That's why Hanafi school, and there are many details, like there are almost 72 sects in Islam, Hanafi school, and there are many this one. So there are very small details about their worldview, is what we call in philosophy metaphysics, epistemology, ethical view, like that. So there are very small details. But personally, why Rumi went to Hanafi school, we can never know. But we can just correlate with this one because Hanafi was more related with Ali and Sufism. So I think that's the reason. Maithili Umranikar has asked, many of Rumi's poems are addressed to his love. So who is this person who he loves? Was she real or imaginary? Okay. This Shams Tabriz that I mentioned, most of his Rumi's poems are dedicated to Shams. Now, after Rumi के this one Rumi के जो अशआर है, रूमी की जो गजालियात है, उसमें Rumi has mentioned his love or his muse there. Persian में the word u is used for he, she, and it. Okay, it's a genderless language. That's why you can never know if Rumi is talking about he, as in Shams Tabrizi, or he is talking about a she, as in some women in his life, or he is talking about it, as in that divine entity. So you will never know, and that is actually the beauty of poetry. So if you want to say that Rumi was talking about actually a female, a female muse or something like that, then it is like that. If you want to say that all of his poems are dedicated to Shams only, then you will say, no, he's talking about Shams only. If you want to say, no, Rumi is constantly talking about it and Khuda and Allah and God, you can take that as it also. Take it as it is, basically. So there is no way to know who is Rumi actually talking about, but most of the times he's addressing all of this one to Shams Tabrizi, and he wasn't certainly imaginary. Some people, they have this. I mean, again, it's a very, it's very harmful to categorize things like this. So some people say, were they homosexuals? Were they, this one? So I think that these notions that we have, these concepts that we have, these labels that we have invented them. Not invented as in we have invented the labels. We have come up with the terminology and nomenclature. Right now, 30 साल भी नहीं हुए हैं, we are just getting into this new world with new concepts and labels. So we shouldn't apply these today's standards on whatever has happened in the past, okay? Because like I said, there is no way to know if that was the case. There is no way to know really. We should just enjoy the poetry. And yes, there is some, critical cases and critical places where you should know what he's actually talking about. So it is like that. So there are people who say, no, Rumi ki poetry is only dedicated to God only. Bas, dusra koi nahi. There are some who are saying, no, Rumi is constantly talking about Shams only. It's not talking about God. So there are many, there are different opinions about that. But the way I see it is you just have to enjoy it, because since it's poetry, since it's art, the subjective nature of the art is what makes it art. If it is objective, it will become a religion. So I believe that we should let it be subjective like that, and rather than declaring anything, we should just enjoy this one. Hegel's dialectics draw a parallel to Rumi's Nainama bit. Kind of, yeah. I haven't read Zyada in detail, but I think probably it does, yeah. Hegel's dialectic draw a parallel to Rumi's Nainama. Yes. Are there any translations available in Hindi? No. Hindi mein you won't find, I think. There are some blogs and everything. Few people are running some blog, but it's from 2012 or something. So they're not doing this one. I myself, I have translated Rumi's poetry in Hindi, Urdu, and you can follow our page Rumi Hai. It's called Rumi Hai, and on Instagram and for this one. And my program, my Dastangoi is titled the same, Rumi Hai. So I have translated a lot of poetry, a lot of shares in Hindi, Urdu mixed. So that's pretty much it, what you'll find on Rumi. And there are many translations in Urdu, but if you can read Urdu, then they'll be helpful to you.
Stay tuned. Very soon we will be coming up with Sambhasha's edition of Rumi Hai. So,
जी this खानों में Miss Ashif Ali, she's asking, I don't know, when is Rumi happening in Mumbai? Yeah. So Rumi is happening in Mumbai probably in March because of we are waiting for this Corona to end, and hopefully, like Rumi says, Ishq will be cure for all of this diseases and this one. So probably in March we're looking forward to Mumbai. Yes, I will spell it Rumi Hai. I've put it in the chat box, the title of my page. So follow that one. Hope. So I hope आप पहले रूमी को कुछ अलग जानते थे और अब कुछ अलग जानने लगे हैं और पहले आई एम नॉट सेइंग पहले कम जानते थे और अभी ज्यादा बट आई एम जस्ट टॉकिंग अबाउट अगर आपको कुछ नया पर्सपेक्टिव मिल गया हो दैट वाज द एम ऑफ दिस होल थिंग एंड एज फॉर द रिसर्च एंड एज फॉर what I want to do with this thing is I've come across many research and many PhD thesis and everything that people are constantly talking about philosophy only. Like for example, I've seen tasawwuf, that is Sufism, and they're comparing it with Advait Vedanta, they're comparing it with monism and everything like that. But these scholars and these researchers, they rarely talk about poetry. They'll just pick up some typical lines, typical shares in Persian, of course, and they'll give examples of that one. They'll cite some examples, and they are very selected verses. So I've started thinking कि बहुत कम लोगों ने actually Persian poetry पढ़ी है रूमी की. Most of them are referring to translations only. So there are very few people who actually, the classical. This is all classical Persian poetry. There are very few people who can understand classical poetry. I'm not one of them. I'm just started this one. So yeah, so as for me, for further research in this one, I want to explore Rumi ki poetry and compare it with another. So my favorite poet, Indian poet, is Tukaram, Santa Tukaram. So yeah, we'll get back to you guys just in a minute. So what I want to do is Tukaram, Santa Tukaram, उनके ये लेके उनके जो अभंग बोलते हैं उनसे मराठी में तो. That and Rumi ke Masnavi, that I want to and actual poetry, not just the philosophy. I want to compare that one and this one. So, Zaid, yes, please ask your question. You have raised your hand.
सर मुझे यही पूछना था कि रूमी सूफी कब कहलाए, यानी जब वो शम्स तबरेज़ी से मिले तभी या फिर उसके बाद कुछ हादसा हुआ है फिर कोई.
Yeah, so this Sufi philosophy, this actually predates Islam. Okay, Sufism was there before Islam actually, and in the Quran you won't find the word Sufi in Quran. Okay, so this Sufism existed before Islam, and what happened was because this relation that Sufism shares with Islam. Sufism is often called mystical aspect of Islam, basically. So what I think is there are many Sufi poets, like for example Bayazid Bastami, Al-Ghazali. There are many Sufi poets. Like यहाँ तक Amir Khusro तक वो tradition चल के आती है. Hazrat Nizamuddin Auliya and Moinuddin Chishti, they're all Sufi. But the fundamental difference between Rumi and other Sufi poets is this one. Is what I think is this one. All of them, they were familiar with Sufism. And they were just included in the school of Sufism. For example, in Indian subcontinent, we call it Diksha Lena, right? Like we accept we become their shagird of that guru, basically. So there is this thing, and there is this another thing which happened with Rumi. I think he wasn't a Sufi. He met Shams Tabriz. He explored himself. Then Shams Tabriz was separated from him. He started searching Shams everywhere. Then he found Shams was within him always, as in the love for Shams, or the whatever the feeling that he shared for towards Shams or for Shams, it was within him only. This is the philosophy of Sufism which Rumi experienced firsthand, personally, pehle, and then he is called Sufi. So it's not like that कि there is this school वहाँ पे सूफी है चलो जाके admission ले लो. It was not like that. For with Rumi, I believe it happened to him first. So one-to-one contact with Sufism and philosophy उनका पहले ताल्लुक हो गया था, and then he was called Sufi. So I think Rumi को सूफी ये हम रेट्रोस्पेक्ट में ही बोलते हैं. I don't think, I mean, there are some references जब रूमी खुद भी थे उनको सूफी कहा जाता था, but सूफी is again a very this one, जो सूफी philosophy जानते हैं ना उन्हें सूफी कहते हैं, but most of Sufis are called Arif only. Arif यानी दाना आदमी, यानी the one with knowledge. Gnostic is what they're called in Greek, I think, Gnostic. I hope I answered your question. Just let me. Tanishka Joy, hello Ashwin, thank you for the session. Could you please spell the word you use for whirling something like raks? Yes, it's called raksosama. Raksosama, RAQS OSAMA. Raksosama. It's called Sufi whirling. Subhankar has asked us one more question. Who was the great poet who said, "I am Allah"? And what was that line again? He didn't say, "I am Allah." He said, "Ana al-Haq." I am al-Haq. Al-Haq yani the reality, the supreme reality. His name was Mansur al-Hilaj. Mansur al-Hilaj. Yes. Amandeep, you have. Yes.
Hello.
जी
Hello.
जी
हाँ जी, नमस्कार सर. थैंक यू सो मच सर. एक्चुअली देखिए मैं मेरा एक सिंपल सा सवाल है. जैसे सूफी पोइट्री लिखते वक्त हम सूफी प्रेमाख्यान को, वो परंपरा जो है कि जो लिखने वाला है वो चाहे मेल है फीमेल है, वो अपने आप को फीमेल ही मानेगा और जिसकी इबादत हो रही है दैट इज फीमेल.
Yes.
ओके. जैसे अभी आपने बताया कि सूफीज्म के बहुत सारे सिलसिले हैं, लेकिन जो जैसे कि मेरा मुगल इंडिया पर ही थोड़ा सा कंसर्न है. तो मुगल पीरियड में चलो ये बाइफरकेट करते करते 12 पॉपुलर सिलसिलाज हो जाते हैं इसके सूफीज्म के. लेकिन सर माय क्वेश्चन इज कि जैसे हम सूफीज्म को देखते हैं आज, जो एक पॉपुलर एक ऑडियंस या पॉपुलर जो यंग माइंड की एक वो चीज है कि सूफीज्म मींस कि दीज कवालीज, दीज सॉन्ग्स एंड दीज all मतलब कि in positive shades, but there was many silsilas those who were very much मतलब कि orthodox in their terms, kind of that सरहंदी, शेख अहमद सरहंदी का जो सिलसिला है, उन्होंने तो बाकायदा लेटर्स लिखे हैं जहांगीर को कि अपने बाप की गलतियां सुधारने का अल्लाह ने एक मौका दिया है. तो मतलब कि they were equally मतलब कि very much. लेकिन जो my thing is कि क्या अब हम सूफीज्म को केवल एक ही शेड में लेके चलें कि ये केवल एक कल्चरल सिंथेसिस का बायस है, कल्चरल सिंथेसिस को ही प्रमोट करता है सूफीज्म, जबकि कुछ सिलसिलाज ने जो है ऑर्थोडॉक्स इस्लामिक ऑर्थोडॉक्सिटी को जो है अपनाया था.
जी, तो पहले मैं थोड़ा सा फिलोसॉफिकली एक आंसर देने की कोशिश करता हूँ. तो देखिए ऐसा है कि कोई भी फिलोसफी, चाहे वो मजहब की हो, एवरी रिलीजन इज अल्टीमेटली अ फिलोसफी, राइट. उसका जब ऑर्गेनाइज्ड रिलीजन बनता है तो देयर आर मेनी एलिमेंट्स एडेड टू इट. सेम थिंग विद सूफीज्म, just a philosophy. Philosophy क्या है कि we have cut from something else and we have to merge in that one. उसके लिए हमें पहले रियलाइज होना पड़ेगा, ये हमें रियलाइज करना पड़ेगा खुद को कि मैं कट चुका हूँ उससे. ओके, मैं कट चुका हूँ उस डिवाइन से. यू आर सेइंग दैट यू आर द डिवाइन, तब तक कुछ नहीं होने वाला. देन व्हेन यू रियलाइज यू आर कट फ्रॉम दैट वन, दैट डिवाइन, देन यू स्टार्ट लुकिंग फॉर द डिवाइन. देन यू हैव द्वैत is what we call in Indian subcontinent. You have duality. But Sufism denies duality. They say there is no duality. There is only one. They believe in Wahdat al-Wajud. Wahdat al-Wajud. Yes. The existence of unity of existence. The oneness of everything exists in one. Everything is one basically. The essence of that ultimate divine entity is within everything. So this is the basic tenet. So you have to realize first that you are part of that one. Once you realize that you are part of that one, you start seeing yourself as different. Then the next step is you realize that that divine is actually within you, which Mansur al-Hilal said that Ana Allah, I am the reality. And once you realize that, you become part with this one. Now this is just a philosophy. Like for example, if you say, if anyone says, or if Mansur al-Hilal says that I am Ana al-Haq, there is no way to check whether you are okay. So this is just a philosophy. So let's just put it at the philosophical level. Your next question, which was a brilliant question, there are there are वर्जन ऑफ सूफिज्म, जैसे आपने कहा कि ये लिख के उन्होंने कहा है कि देयर आर ऑर्थोडॉक्स अबाउट, देयर बीइंग ऑर्थोडॉक्स अबाउट इट। तो जैसा मैंने कहा कि किसी भी फिलोसफी के साथ ये होना ही है। फॉर एग्जाम्पल, इफ यू टेक अ लुक एट बुद्धा से
Yeah.
लेके, इफ यू टेक अ लुक एट क्रिश्चियनिटी, इफ यू टेक अ लुक एट वैदिक हिंदुइज्म में आइडल वर्शिपिंग वाज नॉट अलाउड।
Not allowed here.
But the so-called Hinduism that we call today, वहाँ पे we idol worship basically. Buddha parasti is what we do.
Yes.
Same thing happens with any philosophy. Once the tenets are set, people want to follow that, but they are not able to follow that with that much rigor in this one. So they start making adjustments to it. Okay. This is
Yeah.
what happened. That's why orthodox, unorthodox, these schools and modernist, postmodernist, and this kind of new schools are formed basically, because you can't just follow one ideology, because that's just too hard, too difficult for you. Because no philosophy is absolute. Everything changes with time. No religion. That's why many religions have also adopted change into them, right? That is what
Exactly.
the basis of this whole thing, that if you don't adapt, if your philosophy doesn't adapt to changing surrounding, then it's going to be outdated. And once it is outdated, people will start making modifications to it by their own interpretation. So that's what they're doing. Whether they're orthodox or non-orthodox, that's what they're doing, I think. I hope I answered your question.
Yeah. So thank you, sir. But this is the beauty of Sufism कि हमने केवल इसके पॉजिटिव और बहुत ही कल्चरली जो सिंथेसिस वाले जो शेड्स हैं उन्हीं को ही याद रखा है. It means मतलब cultural synthesis is the base ingredient of the Sufi poetry. As we can see that they can be explained as early revolutionaries. Kind of Rabia ने जैसे हाँ जी. एंड मंसूर को केवल वो सच कहने के लिए अगर फांसी लगा रहे हैं, तो मतलब देवर सेट, मतलब इनके ट्रेडिशन में ही सूफीज्म जैसे इस्लाम से पहले ही एग्जिस्ट करता आ रहा है. और इन्होंने इस्लामिक ऑर्थोडॉक्सिटी को ही चैलेंज किया है सबसे पहले. तो क्वेश्चन इस्लाम के ऊपर ही खड़ा होता है, क्योंकि वो उसकी शेड में से निकला है, एक तरह से एक कला है.
तो मेरे ख्याल से इस्लाम की जगह, इस्लामिक फिलोसफी पे नहीं, this challenges the Islamic religious structure. For example, जैसे हमारे इंडियन सबकॉन्टिनेंट की बात की जाए, तो we have this भक्ति मूवमेंट अभी जो कह रहे हैं, या फिर we have this saint tradition, संत परंपरा in महाराष्ट्र. तो what they're saying is eliminate the agent. खुदा is in yourself, that divine is in yourself. ये बीच वाले जो agents है सब, उनको बंद कर दो. This is what they're saying. That's what actually Sufism is also saying. And once you start attacking religious hierarchy and religious structures, religious constructs, then it's a problem. That's why then that constant struggle between Sufism and Islam starts from there.
Yeah.
So once you just refuse, you just deny the system, you just deny the agents. Momin nahi chahiye, Brahmins nahi chahiye, Pandits nahi chahiye, priests nahi chahiye. I know God is in me. So it becomes, then you actually follow the philosophy, but then these structures and they just collide and they just, they start coming after you. So I think same thing happened with this one. Anuja, you have a question, I think.
Thank you, sir.
No, I just wanted to add another point to the Amandip's question and the query and the discussion happened. So basically, when we are talking about the survival of the cult or something like that, a more of an archaeological explanation, if I would say, it's about once the resistance starts, it's again adopting and then challenging any other traditions. So when we say, I know about the Vedic ones, so why the Buddhism and Jainism came in the first place? Again, to challenge the traditions, and later they adopted from the same Vedic elements they were refusing. For example, Murti Puja. So yes, it's a survival of the cult, something like that. So it might have happened with the Sufism, obviously, but now we say, as you said, in a very good sense, that now we take it in a positive sense. It's again a very good sense of our own, like what to take and what not to take. It's I think we should pat our own back.
That's what I was also saying. Amandeep, you said that we हमारे यहाँ पे we have just we took the good part of Sufism. So that's what ये जो मुल्क है हमारा, this is famous for taking good things and leaving bad.
Of course, sir. Being a person from Punjab, हमारी पंजाबी लैंग्वेज जो हमारी डे टू डे जो हमारी भाषा है, उसमें हम बहुत सारे ऐसे, जैसे दाना लफ्ज है, जो हम अपने घरों में जो बिल्कुल इलिटरेट जट सिख फैमिली से कहते हैं, हाँ बहुत दाना बंदा है, तो हम उसको क्या दाना देंगे, लेकिन वो दाना मतलब वो सारी चीजें एम्बेडेड है हमारे कल्चर में। एंड हमारे म्यूजिक का जो पार्ट है, जो हमारे यंग लड़के लड़कियां भी लिख रहे हैं आजकल थोड़ा सोफियाना इम्प्रेशन में, यहाँ तो बहुत ही गजब की मिंगलनेस है यार। मतलब मेरे को लगता है कि ऐसे बहुत सारे फर्स्ट हैंड बीज यहाँ पड़े हुए हैं, और उसको उस पर काम भी हुआ है, खास तौर पे मौसीकी के हवाले से।
बिल्कुल
जी जी, शुक्रिया सर, थैंक यू मैम।
थैंक यू।
So I think, yes, we had a great session and greater discussion, right?
Yeah.
And that's the whole crux of it. I mean, for a study group, this is what is actually intended, that it was never meant to be just presentation. So we are very happy that so many of you have interacted and contributed and taken this ahead. Thank you so much. Thank you, Ashwin.
Thank you.
And yeah, please do send us the feedback form so that we know what to do more and how to take ahead. And please be in touch. We will be sending you all the details of next programs, but do join in as and when you can. Thank you so much. Thank you again.